Welcome back, everyone, to Car Ray Rob, where I'm Ray.
And I'm Rob, and we want to welcome you to our podcast, Say Hello to My Little Film.
Hey there, it'll be just a little while till Ray and Rob spit their spittle. Come on, check out of the hospital. So grab some of your best peanut brittle. This will be a darn good transmittal. And say hello to my little film.
We're back, everyone, for episode 19 of Say Hello to My Little Film.
We're here. We're glad you are, too.
And it is the scary season.
We're in October.
We are in October.
We have to do scary movies?
Well-
Because it's not really my cup of tea.
And that is fair, and I took that into consideration here because I know you are not the biggest horror movie fan, but I still wanted to have fun with, maybe something that's a little dark.
Yeah.
A little dark, but maybe
Okay.
not scary, but definitely something that could fit in the October vibe.
It's okay if I watch it with the lights on.
Definitely, but
Okay.
this is I'm really excited to watch this movie. This is one of the first movies I wrote down on our lists. When we created lists
Yeah.
when we started this podcast. This was one of the first movies I wrote
Okay.
down.
You
So
saved it.
I saved it. One, because it was an October movie.
Well, if you've been saving it for this long, Rob, it must be good. What do you got?
What do you got? What do you got?
Here we go. I am recommending the 1974 rock musical horror classic from Brian De Palma, Phantom of the Paradise.
Wow, that's a lot of descriptive words for a
And you will
movie.
see it is all of them. It is all of them and more. Oh, I love this movie so much. Okay, so, Brian De Palma.
I know Brian De Palma, but how do I know Brian De Palma?
I mean, Untouchables.
Okay, yeah,
the
yeah.
one that I'm sure there would be a lot of people like, well, why aren't you showing him Blowout? Because you probably haven't seen Blowout either.
I have not.
Blowout is an amazing movie. I think there are. I think you can have a best movie and a favorite movie from
Sure.
a director.
Yes.
And I can clearly say for myself that Blowout is Brian De Palma's best movie. If I had to choose, but my favorite is probably Phantom of the Paradise.
That's kind of what we do here.
Exactly. And this movie is so fun. So basically it stars William Finley, who also starred in Brian De Palma's film Sisters, which is great, as Winslow Leach, and he is a songwriter, and he finds himself in the crosshairs of Swan, who is kind of this mythical composer, singer. I don't even know how to describe him. He's just like a megastar, played by Paul Williams, who also scored the movie, who is amazing in it. And he hears Winslow's music, decides that he loves it, but doesn't like Winslow. So he wants the music, so he steals it from him.
Thief.
And ends up, there's chaos kind of ensues, some bad stuff happens to Winslow, and he ends up haunting the Paradise, which is the new club that Swan is opening. And it is just so much fun. The music's so good. Jessica Harper is also in it from Suspiria fame. Like, she is...
Am I going to be like downloading a bunch of stuff on my iTunes after watching
it
this?
The soundtrack to this movie is incredible. Like, just absolutely incredible. Real quick, this is one of my favorite theater experiences I've ever had.
Oh, wow.
And my friend Popkoff took me to see this at a
You
Music Monday.
weren't even born.
Well, that's true, but I saw it the very first time I saw this movie was in the theater at Music Monday at the Alamo Draft House. I remember what I ate for dinner that night. It's such like a memorable burn in my brain experience. I had queso fries for dinner that night. Very healthy. Dinner of champions. But man, this movie is something else.
Sounds something else.
Yeah, it like I said, but it's not scary in that way. It's a little campy, a little hokey, so it's the music's a little punk, a little rock, a little glam. Like, there's just all kinds of kind of this amalgamation in this kind of Faustian bargain type movie, centered kind of, like I said, kind of around the Phantom of the Opera-esque
Very
type
cool.
stuff. But yeah, so fun. I can't wait for you to watch this movie.
I like having fun, and I think I'm kind of looking forward to checking this out.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be cool.
I think it's going to be great. I hope you enjoy this movie. I hope everybody else is going to enjoy this movie as much as I'm going to enjoy watching this movie for probably the 100th time. I watch this movie at least 12 times a year. I love this movie so much. So,
guys, Rob couldn't have sold you any more than that. Go check it out.
Yeah, so now's the time. Now is the time for minds to be blown. So I want you to pause the podcast and feast your eyes on the wonders of Phantom of the Paradise. And then I want you to come back and I want you guys to try to stop me from telling you how much
I don't think we're going to be able to do that.
You're not going to be able to do it.
I feel pressure. I have to like this movie because you're going to fight me if I don't.
So everybody, and we're going to enjoy the holiday season here, this October holiday season at Say Hello to My Little Film, and we're going to go do that right now.
Ray and Rob are currently watching the film. You may be also watching the film. If you're not, then you're listening to me say that Ray and Rob are watching the film. They'll be right back when they're done watching the film.
All right, everybody, we are back. We are back from watching Phantom of the Paradise.
Yes, we are.
Ray is still here, so it wasn't too scary.
No, I actually wasn't scared at all.
Oh, good.
So thank you very much for throwing me the softball.
But you see why it works as a Halloween movie.
Absolutely.
Like, just stylistically speaking. Like, there's some dark parts to the movie, obviously.
Sure.
Costumes.
There's some violence they don't really show, but or it's not necessarily on screen, but it's there's violence. I guess there's haunting of sorts.
yeah.
But there's no like real. I guess there's monsters, but not like Halloween monsters.
That's true. More of like philosophical monsters.
Yeah.
I mean, there's which is interesting. This movie, kind of taking a couple of different things, as I said before, the Faust aspect, the Phantom of the Paradise aspect, and kind of you have these two characters, Winslow Leach, who becomes the Phantom, and Swan, and they both kind of have their own obsessions, and you know what? You could even make an argument that you don't really know who the monster is.
Oh, that's beautiful.
At some time,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think there's something to be said about that.
Yeah, I think there is. Maybe that should be our question that we kind of explore.
Let's do it. I like it.
Who is the monster?
Who is the monster? Who's the true monster? Is it Swan or Winslow Leach?
And Swan is just a little guy, but monsters can be little.
That's true. They all come in different shapes and
That's
sizes.
how they fit under your bed.
Exactly. I bet Paul Williams would fit under most beds in the world.
That's a very good point.
It's like the Fantastic Mr. Fox. He couldn't touch the bottom of any shallow end of pool in the world.
Yeah. Well, and even in his house in the movie, there's a lot of rooms that have small doors, and I guess that's just they've been swanified.
Right. But for as small stature as he is, man, that man can sing. He can play music. He can compose music.
Yeah.
Paul Williams is a genius.
Because the movie says, I can't remember if you said in the before section that he wrote all of this music.
He did.
The music's fun.
Oh my God, it's so good.
Yeah, I like.
There's not a dud in this movie.
I really like the Juicy Fruits opening number.
Oh, Goodbye Eddie, Goodbye.
Yeah,
so good.
And I was kind of wondering if this was going to be like, all right, are they telling me the plot of the movie with this song? Like,
sure.
Is that like sometimes people try to be clever
Definitely.
and do that.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's like it's giving you the vibes of the movie more than anything
tragedy
else,
of rock and roll, if you will. Yeah.
So that was really cool.
Yeah, and it just goes from there. I mean,
takes off.
It just takes off. This is a movie that doesn't stop. In my opinion.
Yeah, I really liked pace. I think this movie's is it 90 minutes on the dot? 91 minutes?
91, something like it's like
so
90, 91.
It's a clip, and you could have dragged this. There's definitely parts they could have dragged out and made this a really bloated movie. There's just some classic ththings there's a prison break, but they're not going to they do it in a montage really fast.
Yeah,
dug it. There's just lots of little examples when I know when the Phantom gets walled into his office.
Yeah, when Swan walls him
how's he
in,
going to get out? He just does.
Right, he just powers
off
his
screen,
way out. Right, it's almost like
so. It's
strength.
Don't waste time. Don't get stuck in the minutia. Keep the pace going. Keep the fun going.
Yeah,
smart little choices there.
Absolutely, and like I said, in there's a lot of cases for why De Palma is such a great filmmaker in his other movies. Like I said, like Blowout, Scarface, The Untouchables. There's you can go on and on about why De Palma is such a classic, great filmmaker. But this movie, it doesn't get, like you said, kind of bogged down in that. It's a great movie because it is what it is. It's fun, and man, like I said, the music is infectious.
Yeah, it's like it's going 90 miles an hour the whole time.
Yeah.
Which is cool. I really like the opening act of the movie. I don't think we need to talk about like every single beat, but I like the investment into like who the dude is that becomes the Phantom.
Yeah.
And he's not just a dude with the thickest set of glasses I've ever seen.
It's close. Maybe.
The dude's blind. But
how can you play the piano?
Blind people can play the piano.
Stevie Wonder, Ray Charles, both genius piano players.
And this guy.
And this
with
guy,
his glasses off.
with his glasses up.
And I liked when he jumped on the piano to start too. But
well, it was a great way to introduce him, like you said, as a character, because you had that big production of the Juicy Fruits, and it's again this kind of infectious pop song, and then you have the solo of Winslow Leach on the piano kind of by himself while everybody is packing up the set and like nobody's paying attention and all of that. And it's, it kind of shows where he is in the world.
Yeah.
Like he's unnoticed, but he's super talented because the song is fantastic.
Right.
But somebody does notice him, and that is Swan.
He loves the music, but not the man.
Right, exactly. And it's also a great kind of scene for him and Philbin, the Philbin character as well, because the Philbin's little rant about like the previous act that he'd been working with, who had left them, and it kind of like broke down the exploitation of rock and roll, like lifetime contracts and things like that. So it really set the stage.
The whole movie is on that topic
definitely,
too. Yeah,
definitely. But it sets the stage for it, and you kind of tell like who Swan is, what kind of businessman he is, how he treats people, and you get to what's in store.
I like that Philbin character. Like, I'm not like rooting for him. He's bad.
Right.
I mean, when he got shot in the head at the end, I'm happy.
Sure.
But I just, I thought the performance was good. I just think the character, like how he was created, or how he was acted, was really fun.
Yeah, they use him, I think, in a really great, effective way, because, like I said, with his rant, you kind of explore the exploitation side of rock and roll when he first meets Winslow backstage and talks to him about wanting the music. He's a very unconventional rock star, pop star, if you will, Winslow Leach. So it's not, you can tell something's up, and you already kind of know something's up because of his previous rant, that they just want the music, they don't want him.
Yeah, he's trying to be a swindler in this moment.
Right, exactly. So, in that scene, you also kind of see Winslow's temper, which again kind of goes to our question about like the monster element of it, because Winslow definitely has his problems. Like he's not a perfect hero in that way.
Yeah, he like puts his hands, he doesn't put his hands around Philbin's throat, but maybe he's grabs him by the collar, shoves him up against the wall.
They talk about it, he just really hates the Juicy Fruits. And like he's definitely not into them performing his music. But yeah, so I do think for such a short kind of first act, because again, talking about how quick this movie works, like they set up the characters really well, really quickly.
Yeah, it's kind of like, Winslow goes into building after building, gets kicked out of building after building, but it's just a good way of showing like his frustrations being built up. Really quickly, Swan, like the escalation of how much Swan is screwing him over, like you get a handle on that really quick.
Definitely.
I really liked sending him to jail. I'm like, wait, is this gonna be a jail movie? Like, what's going on here? But they're like I said, they're in and out of the prison break really quick, which I like.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And and in that sequence, he ends up meeting Phoenix, which obviously becomes the quote unquote love interest, if you will, of the movie. Obsession, right, for both Swan and for Winslow. But something else that I really enjoy about this movie is kind of the overall production design.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're talking about him going in and out of buildings, just the way that the buildings are designed. So like when he goes into Swan or to Death Records, just like the kind of jilted hallways, and like the color schemes, and all of this stuff. Just the way it's shot, it's such a cool kind of like punk gothic type style that I think fits this movie so well. Yeah,
it does. In the Paradise too.
Yep.
I just think it all fits really well. it adds another layer because it's vibes of its own. You know,
Right.
it's self-explanatory to the audience.
Definitely.
It sets the tone.
Yeah.
And I think when you can have your background, viewing experience do that, that's really good stuff.
Definitely. And something else that I think is interesting is how long it takes for them to put Swan on screen.
Yeah, that obviously has to be on purpose.
Yeah. So, like, he's talking to Philbin, having, you can hear him, obviously, and
Right.
all of that. You can see his power and his, like,
Presence.
sway and his presence, exactly. And then you see him, and it's Paul Williams. And
Right.
like you said,
He's
he's
just
a
a
little
little
guy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's a little guy, but he feels larger than life by
Right.
that point, and it's so good.
I think it's really the other part of that scene too. It's, speaking of the exploitation, is like in that bed is all these girls, and they're just like hoping to be viewed by him.
Right.
It's like they've kind of like, they know they don't have to sing. They're not in like a typical audition, but it's just like what will you settle for? What will you sell yourself for?
Right.
And that's kind of what this movie gets into too, is because
Really?
Winslow has to sell himself at some point. And I've learned one thing from watching movies. And if you're ever given a contract that's 900 pages long, like, don't sign it.
Right.
It's not going to be good.
Well, and especially after you do it in your own blood.
Definitely.
That's bad juju magumbo right there.
Don't back out. It's too good to be true, and the guy who's making you do it is probably possessed in some form or fashion.
Definitely.
If he's not the devil himself.
Yeah, but so when Winslow breaks out of jail, I think it's really great because like you said, that whole sequence is really good. Like, the music's really fun. It's really that upbeat, kind of like jailbreak music. And he like goes down the chute, comes out of the box or whatever, and then he ends up in the Death Records vinyl pressing plant.
Right.
And like
Destroying
that's where
stuff.
Right. So that's where his like the face injury comes from. And I actually read a really funny story about that I guess William Finley was actually very scared about that scene because of the having to like stick his head into the actual press, because it was a working press.
Okay, you don't have to do that.
Right, exactly. But what they had done was I guess they had like put like certain like chocks like in this like in parts of it so that it wouldn't close all the way, and then they replaced part of it with foam. Well, I guess the machine was so powerful that it actually broke the chocks, and it like started to close around him, and they literally had to pull him out before it pressed his head. So, yeah.
Listen, it's not being committed to the character.
Right,
I mean,
that's-
worst case is you end up not having to do makeup for the rest of the shoot because you look like the Phantom. I mean,
Exactly. It's method acting right there.
that's exactly the definition.
Exactly. But then obviously I love the next sequence because it kind of goes back to that classic slasher feel where he like returns to the paradise, and it's like from his point of view, and he's like, you hear the breathing. It's very Michael Myers.
I literally wrote like, or Darth Vader. I'm like,
Vader.
Did Star Wars steal this? Because like it's
Maybe,
literally
yeah.
like 2 years before Star Wars comes out, this very effective like scary breathing. I'm like, this is literally George Lucas's inspiration.
Well, sure, but even funnier is this was before Halloween.
Yeah.
So when I just use Michael Myers to describe it, but this is 4 years before Halloween.
Yeah.
So I think John Carpenter was a big fan of Phantom of the Paradise, if I do say so myself. But how can you not be?
I agree. But he uses his scary voice or his scary breathing to get his wardrobe.
Right. And the Phantom is born. He gets the helmet, and the helmet is so good.
Yeah, and this is probably a little nerdy, but it has like that Court of Owls vibe. If you like read Batman comics, like it's got like maybe what that would look like in real life.
For sure.
To me, it's kind of owl-esque, super cool, but like metal-ish and punk rock. So there's a little bit more punk rock than like the Phantom of the Opera look that that it
Definitely
could be inspired by.
Yeah, and I now like he is fully born, and we have I think a great scene we have to talk about, because I think it also is something that De Palma is kind of known for, especially in this earlier work, and obviously even going on into his later work, is the split screen.
I love that.
So
I absolutely love that scene.
Yeah, so that scene is really great, where the Juicy Fruits are practicing the song, and it's upholstery. That's as the Beach Bums.
Yeah.
And and they've got the cars that come out, and the Phantom plants the bomb, and it's great because it kind of goes back to that whole Hitchcock thing.
Big time.
Of like the ticking time bomb under the table, and
Yeah.
you've got that like double view with the split screen, which is just so great.
Yeah, I really I'm watching that scene. I'm like, I need to go to a YouTube video and see the making of this scene. I hope there one exists. It's like, it's really cool. I want, because my brain gets lost in scenes like that. I'm like, is this like live, or is it like cut to look like it's live? Because it's shot so well, you really can't tell. Like, you can't see if there's any kind of like movie magic going on here, or is it like they've just like they're doing this really well?
I'm pretty sure it's two cameras. Yeah, I'm
yeah,
pretty
they
sure
probably
it's just two
are.
cameras. Yeah,
but I just would figure like sound wise, it would be a bummer to like really hard to do, but they do it. And it's really effective. It's really good. And like you said, there's that. I think the stuff that I always think of Glorious Bastards, but it comes from Hitchcock. That there's that sense of dread that you know of, nobody else knows. I think Glorious Bastard recently did it really, really well. Well, that's not recent, I guess.
Right, not anymore. We're old.
But yeah, they're doing it there. Like, you're just waiting for this bomb to get off. You're seeing you don't know how close everybody's going to be to when the bomb goes off. You're not necessarily a huge fan of anybody that's in the proximity, but
right. Yeah, but there's a lot of innocent people because, again, there's the performers and everything. Like, they're just
no performer is innocent,
especially in the world of Swan.
Right. But yeah, you're right. And that's another example too, where I think like, all right, is there going to be a mystery? Like, how long is it going to take for everybody to realize that there's a haunting going on? And like, Swan sees him right away. Like, oh, that's him. He's watching. He did it.
I know it is. Yeah, exactly. And I think, again, it kind of goes to that pacing element that really just keeps this movie fast-paced and fun. And, so he finally, they come face to face, the Phantom and Swan, and he's like, join me, and together we will rule the galaxy,
Basically, you're the emperor with really small wrists.
Right, it's very small, but it's, but it's great. And I love the room where
his little secret
room, his recording studio, where they kind of, work to put his voice back together.
Yeah.
And he can,
I thought, Oh, yeah, sorry. I guess it was the secret room.
Yeah.
I don't know where. No, I guess his voice room is somewhere else. I thought you were talking about Swan's, like, he turns the candle to open the door.
Oh, sure.
Room.
Right, where he keeps the footage. We'll get to that. But I'm talking about where the Phantom is. Yeah.
Where he changes his voice and stuff. Yeah, that was really cool. I like that setup. I like how it was shot. Like, you're seeing his voice go through the wires. It's getting a little bit cleaner. A little bit cleaner.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, kind of going back to that production design element of it. I felt like it felt very cool because it was like claustrophobic, but it was also like, because of the technological element of it, it felt like super advanced and cool. You know what I mean? Not just like I'm sitting in a cave.
Right. And it kind of felt like reminded me of like Empire with like Darth Vader's little regeneration bubble. Like, all right, another thing taken from Star Wars is right
George
from
Lucas
this movie.
Was clearly a big fan of Phantom of the Paradise.
Yes, and I'll stop making those kind of connections, but that's just plain out robbery.
And they kind of he convinces him to rewrite his cantata, so that he can open the paradise with it. They're going to work together, and they're going to audition singers, and then that's when Phoenix comes back into the story.
Yeah, and as soon as the Phantom lets it be known that he's a Phoenix fan, that's like when things start to go bad for him.
Definitely,
because he signed a contract by this point, right?
He signed the contract.
That's a little fishy,
right? It's a transportation clause. Everything that's excluded will be deemed included.
Right.
That's a clause to protect you.
Yeah. Classic slimy agent things. Like, don't do that. Don't sign that contract. But,
absolutely.
And I liked it too, like when he went, because he records everything, as we learn. And when he goes back and watches a scene, because it's like Phantom's got the messed up voice,
right?
But when he goes back and plays back the scene, when he goes back and listens to what occurred,
right,
his like Phantom's voice sounds more normal, and his voice sounds like evil and possessed.
Exactly, and we'll get to that part because there's
they said they make you think about like, why is this
right? Because we talk about the Phantom of the Paradise, or the Phantom of the Opera angle and the Faust angle, but there is a third story that's kind of interwoven in it. But I kind of held it back because I didn't want to give anything away.
Don't.
But we'll get to that. But it's a good point because there's that. But then we have he basically once Winslow, like you said, brings in Phoenix, or like says that he wants Phoenix. Swan pushes Phoenix to the back and then does an audition, and man. When this character enters this movie, It is so unforgettable, so awesome, and I love this character so much. And that is... Oh, wait, no. I give you the future. Beef.
Oh, man. Don't hold the beef.
Because beef is amazing.
Beef is extra. Beef's a little extra in all the good ways.
Yeah, exactly. Gerrit Graham, who,
Right.
you know, if you've seen him in anything recently, more recent than this, you know, when you look back on this movie, you're like, whoa, this is the same guy.
Yeah.
It
What
kinda
else did he
blows my
do?
mind.
I can't say that I recognized him right off the
Let's
bat.
see, Gerrit Graham.
Put you on the spot, Rob.
Right, you did. He is, let's see, I've got some stuff here. He was in My Girl 2. I remember that. He played the guy who had the Corvette that Veda Sultanfuss's uncle was working on.
Okay.
He was in Sidekicks. I mean, he wasn't a big actor, but, you know, he was in Police Academy 6. He was in Child's Play 2, Sidekicks, My Girl 2. You know, he's been in things.
Yeah,
you know, so you have seen him before. But Stuart Saves His Family.
Great.
Stuart, director, come on, it was a Harold Ramis movie. Stuart Smalley, come on, no, okay. Anyway, but yeah, so it's a great character for him. And like I said, as soon as he comes on screen, like he lights it up.
Yeah, talk about taking advantage of your screen time.
Yeah,
too.
absolutely.
I really liked when he was like trying to leave, like a little bit later in the movie, but like that confrontation with Philbin, I thought was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, another great Philbin scene. You know, so Philbin comes and has to, you know, well, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
We're skipping some
skip
parts.
some parts. But let's step back. So, you know, they bring him in. Beef is, you know, has to kind of make the song his own
because it was written for Phoenix.
It was written for Phoenix,
and at this point, the Phantom, like, he doesn't know about Beef.
Yeah,
he only thinks that he's still writing for Phoenix, which
right,
is
because he's basically locked up
mind.
rewriting the cantata. That's the thing. So Swan's able to kind of keep him away, and yeah, so when, you know, Beef has to practice the song, and he's like, this is scored for a check.
Yeah.
You know, like that whole scene, like it's so good. And and he the night of the show, Phantom finally gets wind that Beef is on board here. And
well, he knows that his draft has been stolen while he was sleeping or drugged up, hard to tell. And he opens his door and he sees he's been bricked in.
Yep, he finished it, so he's been bricked in.
He just escapes.
And then he escapes again, it just happens.
We don't need to see that.
Don't need to see it, it's great. But then he goes to Beef's dressing room and like attacks Beef in the shower. Again,
psycho-ish.
Psycho Alfred Hitchcock. Yeah. So.
But he doesn't kill him.
Right. Because he just wants him to know. You know, his songs are only meant for Phoenix, and anyone else who tries dies.
Right.
Which is when
Beef's words.
He's out. He's like, okay, I'm done, and he starts running down the stairs, and that's when Philbin catches him.
Yeah, and that's when he's like, you know, I also liked when he was like, you know, he's like, this is you didn't see any Phantom, you're on drugs. And he's like,
I know the difference from drug reel from real. Like, I know drug reel from real. That's another one of my favorite lines. There's so many good lines in this movie. This is like a movie you wouldn't expect to be as quotable as it is, but man, is it.
Yeah, drug reel from real. That's probably going to make the vernacular for me, just so you know. But he does get back. Philbin forces him to work, and he does. He knows he's putting his life on the line, but he's willing to do it.
And then one of the best musical sequences in the movie, Somebody Super Like You. Yeah. Oh my God. Like, talk about an encapsulation of the theatrical nature of this movie. Just pure rock greatness.
And I was like, Phantom, are you really going to mess this up? Like, the crowd is into this. Let it go.
Well, but it's not like they weren't in it by the end.
True.
Because, you know, so they have the Somebody Super Like You. They put Beef together. Beef sees life at last. And then finally, the death of Beef.
He is electrocuted
by
a neon
stage,
sign in the shape of a lightning bolt.
Yeah, but the crowd goes nuts, and it's like I wrote this down. It's like death is entertainment. You know, at this point, it's like.
At first, I wasn't sure if the crowd thought it was fake, or
you don't know,
or not. But then I think it does become like the crowd is just like, we don't care, give us what we want.
Yeah, I wrote, does the audience even know it's real? Yeah, and I do think that there is that kind of question of whether they do or they don't. But I think there, a few scenes later when they're like literally wheeling his body bag out and they're chanting his name, I think it's like, okay, he's probably not dead anymore. But I think what's interesting is the fact that Phoenix rises from the ashes of beef because she needs to save to calm everybody down.
Yeah.
And so they put her out on stage and she sings Old Souls and tears down the house. Tears down the house.
She's a bass.
Yeah.
She crushes it. And this is what Phantom's been waiting for. He holds the spotlight. He's got it on her.
Right. And
this is what he's wanted the whole time.
Exactly. And I think this is kind of going back to our question for a second. I think this is where you can start making the argument for Winslow being a bit of the monster, because he does have this obsession with getting his music out there. He knows he can't sing it, so he wants her to do it.
Yeah.
So he's taking out the people that are in his way from accomplishing that. And then finally,
because he took out the light guy too, didn't
right.
he? Yeah. Takes out the lights guy.
So she finally gets that moment, again, tears down the house as you knew she would, and then Swan swoops in and takes her for himself, if you will.
It's his creation.
Right. She says, I owe you everything. You just give me that crowd again.
Right.
And it's that hook that she's hooked. It's like a drug.
The adrenaline.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, like you were talking about earlier. We've talked about this whole idea of, the exploitation of rock and roll, and obviously she's being very exploited in this moment, but she wants it. It's an addiction.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing that just musicians do get stuck into, or any kind of performer, is like you just comedians, you want the next laugh, right? Like that is your drug, and you need that.
Yeah.
And that's where she's at, because she at one point she's basically kind of like, you could say, like rescued by Phantom, like she's about to leave. The crowd is like obsessively like crazy.
Right.
He gives her the out, like the safe passage, takes her
yeah.
to the roof, and
he tries to warn her.
And she ain't listening.
He's gonna destroy you, and but again, like maybe in that moment he realizes, like, oh man, like I've gone too far. Like I know, like what the path that I've paved for her to get here is going to end up destroying her, like it destroyed me. And so it happens quickly, but I do think this, like I said, this is where you can start making that case about like who is the monster.
Definitely, yeah. And then not soon after this, we start to see the other side of Swan being a monster.
Right. Absolutely. And, so obviously at that point, I think the other part of it too in this moment, we'd mentioned the idea of, or the moment where beef is being rolled out, in a body bag. And he even says to Phil, but like, have you ever seen a crowd like this? Like,
right.
They don't want it to end. So I think in that moment, I think that's when Swan realizes how far he can push things.
Right.
And like realizes that like what he ultimately decides he wants to do with Phoenix, which we'll get to in a second, is that's the end goal, and it's because the crowd will love it. That's entertainment.
They saw one death, yes. They I guess they need to see another.
Right. Yeah. So he signs her to the contract. She's going to close the paradise. And but he reveals that it's going to be a wedding now, and he's going to have her killed during the finale, because again, that's entertainment, like a live execution.
Can you imagine
on TV?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Can you imagine a live execution on TV?
That's entertainment. Like and that it's obviously, I guess we should say that the Phantom is the one who kind of sees this, because he discovers the room. And this is where that third story comes into it.
Yeah.
Because besides just the Phantom of the Opera and Faust, the other part of it is the picture of Dorian Gray.
Right.
Because so the whole thing is that Swan is also under contract, which you find out, when Winslow tries to stab him and kill him. And after he killed himself, right? Like he killed himself, and then he tries to realizes he can't kill himself, and then he tries to kill Swan.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm under contract too.
I love that. I had to write that down, because he gets Winslow just gives him the look like, why aren't you dying?
Right.
And he's like, I'm under contract too.
Right.
And it's like, oh darn.
And that's when he finds the room and realizes that he has also sold his soul.
Yeah.
And but instead of aging, he ages on film. That's why there are no pictures. Throughout the whole movie, you've noticed that nobody takes pictures of him, or is allowed to take pictures of him, or anything like that, or you can see him at certain times. and that's why, is because he has sold his soul to the devil as well.
Yeah, and I like that when he goes back and you like think of like, oh wait, yeah, nobody ever takes a picture of him. I remember like at the airport when he was introducing beef, there was a reporter with a camera and they take it from him and stuff. So I think that was really cool to kind of throw that back in, make you think back like, they've been doing this the whole movie? And like, yep, they have.
Yeah.
So that's been really cool. That was really cool. And then, but it does set the stage because now Winslow, the Phantom, has his ammunition. He knows what has to be done to save Phoenix.
Right.
And he does it.
Yep, he destroys all the film, which is the thing that needs to be destroyed to be able to destroy Swan. So he does that, saves Phoenix the last second, which, like you said earlier, it ends up hitting Philbin.
Yeah, Philbin gets a bullet in the brain.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really crazy sequence, just in general. Like, just the way it's shot, the way that it's set up, this whole finale, you know, where she kind of like dances her way up to the stage and everything. The crowd's going absolutely ape. And like they're
loving it.
They're loving it. And so and then, you know, obviously when Philbin gets shot, they go even crazier. You know, and they kind of again playing into what Swan was thinking.
Yeah, he was right.
Right, yeah. And then, you know, Winslow gets down on the stage, reveals that, you know, takes off the mask that Swan's wearing, reveals that he is old and I mean, he almost looks burned.
Yeah, he does.
I know that's supposed to be the film. Like, I think that's a little bit ambiguous. Like, is it because the film burned? Does that mean that he's burned?
Right. Or is it like just bad makeup to look old? I don't think so, because the mask he was wearing before that, because he was trying to hide his face.
Yeah.
It was like a perfect, like, kind of like a Michael Myers version of Paul Williams' face.
Sure.
You know, like it was perfectly covered up as he's getting married. And then, you know, basically the ending gets a little tragic. You know, we kind of see, you know, both Swan and Winslow then...
Because they terminate together.
Yeah. Their contracts terminate together.
So when they... because the wound in Winslow's chest opens up. Because one of the... It's actually kind of crazy because, like, he stabs Swan, and then, like, somebody from the audience also ends up, like, stabbing Swan at one point. Because he takes one of the masks, like one of the bird masks, and stabs him with it. Again, it kind of goes to this idea that, like, everybody in the audience is just so caught up in this moment. And
they become a mob.
Right, they really did. They really did kind of become a mob, and it shows just kind of, like, the nasty side of it. And, yeah, and it ends up Winslow... The wound opens up, Winslow bleeds out, but Phoenix, in the final moments,
finally
recognizes it's Winslow.
The guy that helped her, the guy that she knew, she knew that they were singing his stuff,
right?
You know, but they all thought he died. Like, that was kind of the thing, is he died in the prison break, I think.
Right.
No, he was the Phantom.
Yeah.
It was kind of that tragic, kind of reminded me of like a little bit of like a King Kong. You kind of see him there, and like,
right?
Don't they have a line at the end of that movie like who's the
beauty and
who's
like,
something like
that? Yeah.
And this was
kind
of
that killed the beast,
right?
Yeah, it's Beauty that killed.
And there was
the
a Beauty and the Beast-ish type feel
sure,
to this.
Yeah,
you
could have
know
a
what I
little
mean?
bit of that in there, a little bit, you know. But yeah, it's. And then just to kind of talk about the final song, The Hell of It. Like, I don't know if you listened to the lyrics.
I did.
It's so good.
I did.
Like, I'm telling you.
That's the only song I think Paul Williams sings.
Right, in the movie.
In the movie.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right.
But it's like, it was like perfectly written for, I think, a description of, like, you know, there's two verses. There's two kind of like just like verses, I guess, that aren't the chorus, and like they describe kind of Philbin and him with one, and kind of Phantom and Phoenix with the other. It's really nice.
Yeah, it's it's pretty great. I think the like I said, the soundtrack is perfect in my mind. Like, I think it's just absolutely perfect, and I just, again, like I could spend another hour talking about this movie. We could go back over all this stuff again, but you know, I think one thing that's kind of like I said, kind of interesting about this movie is I think most people just don't realize it's a Brian De Palma movie.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not something that they would think of and say, "Oh, Brian De Palma made this."
Sure.
And I sometimes I love that with
movies.
Definitely.
Like, I'm like, you know, if you told me the guy who made Scarface did a Phantom of the Opera type movie, I'm gonna be like, oh, it's gonna be hardcore.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, another movie that comes from mind is Francis Ford Coppola made One from the Heart. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. It's like a musical, and that would have been like, really? Like, Francis Ford Coppola made the guy who made Apocalypse Now made a musical? Like, that's crazy. Like, so I always appreciate it when a director is not afraid to break out of their mold. But to be fair, this early on, he didn't really have a mold.
True.
So that's kind of the other part of it too.
Yeah, this is before all the stuff that we really know him for.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Yeah, there's some of the side by side stuff, but not a, not a ton of crossover. And like stylistically, I'm not sure.
Are you talking about the split
Just
screen?
oh no, just split screen. Yes,
but I mean, really, split screen is something, but De Palma's definitely known for.
No, but I mean everything else, like the split screen. But then after that, like it doesn't, I wouldn't say like, it's not a Tim Burton thing. This feels like De Palma.
Oh, definitely not. Yeah, definitely not. I think. Yeah, it's like I said. I just if it's a movie that if you asked people to list 10 Brian De Palma movies, this wouldn't be one of them.
Sure.
But sadly, it was a box office failure.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's not incredibly surprising.
Yeah.
I mean, it is like it's a movie that kind of feels like a cult movie.
Definitely feels like a cult classic.
Yeah, and I was looking kind of through some reviews from the time, and I saw Pauline Kael, actually the famous Pauline Kael, had a great little review for it that said, though you may anticipate a plot turn, it's impossible to guess what the next scene will look like or what its rhythm will be. De Palma's timing is sometimes wantonly unpredictable and dampening, but mostly it has a lift to it. You practically get a kinetic charge from the breakneck wit he put into Phantom. It isn't just the picture, his vitality, but that one can feel the tremendous kick the director got out of making it.
I was going to say, she says all that. To me, I'm like, it was a powerhouse of a movie. I think that's my one word. But she can elegantly say many, many words to describe.
Sure. Yeah, it's for being a music, I love musicals. I really do. And I love unconventional musicals in that way. And I think this one kind of falls into that category because it's not a musical in the sense that, like everybody breaks out singing and it's,
right.
You know what I mean? But it does center around the music.
Sure.
And, another one that's maybe a little bit more of a musical that, is kind of contemporary to this in that regard. And I compare it to it quite often, and I'm not going to lie, I always say is better, but that's just my opinion. I know other people will hold different ones, and that is compared against the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Sure. Phantom of the Paradise is superior in my mind, though I do love Rocky Horror, so please no hate comments about that. I do love Rocky Horror.
Rocky Horror is like so mainstream nowadays. It's like it's like the cult classic underground mainstream movie.
Sure, absolutely, but it's still good. I mean, it's still great.
No,
I still love Rocky Horror. But yeah, I think for me, Phantom of the Paradise is just like it's another level, and it's a movie that I love to share with people.
And so we have to answer our question then.
Yes, we do. We are.
Who is the bigger monster? I know who my vote is.
Okay.
And god darn, it's not Winslow.
It's going to be
sometimes you got to kill a couple people to get what you want.
Get what you want.
But you don't sign them to lifetime contracts and make them make a deal with the devil. You don't do that, Rob.
I think you're probably right. Like I said, I think you can make an argument there is a time in this movie when Winslow does allow himself to become the monster as well, or at least a monster as well, alongside Swan. But you're right. In the end, he has a redemption that Swan doesn't have. Swan is willing to, go down in a ball of flames, literally, on film, whereas Winslow, he cares about Phoenix.
Yeah.
And I think that's, when he realizes what he allowed to happen to Phoenix by kind of allowing Swan to put her where Winslow wanted him to be, or wanted her to be.
Yeah.
That's what he wanted for her, and in his own obsession. But he realized that it was bad, and that was not a good situation, and ultimately saved her. So
well said.
I agree. It was a fun question, but I don't know if there was ever any other response.
Right or wrong,
Swan
we knew we were
always going to be the monster, even
sure.
though Paul Williams is a genius. If you're out there, Paul, I love you. You are fantastic. This soundtrack is incredible, and yes, I can't say that enough. But now we have to answer the next and probably biggest question of our podcast, and that is, did you like the movie, Ray, and will you recommend it?
I feel like the hardest part of this podcast is trying to keep this answer like ambiguous because it's too hard. But yes, I did enjoy this movie. I enjoyed this podcast, I'm going to say, and I agree with that too.
Spread the love of Phantom of the Paradise.
I do. I think, I like that the movie's got it's like, no doubt, for 91 minutes, it's a very fun movie, but there is like real themes under there that aren't like fun, like they're heavy themes. I like when a movie can balance that, like, the way the way it's addressing the music industry in pretty much every facet, from the fans feeling like they can, run rampant or do whatever they want with the
Right.
stars if they're having enough fun, what people will do to make a buck, the contracts, stealing music from people, throwing them to the side, just all this is in this movie.
Definitely. Well, and blurring the lines of entertainment.
Right.
Like we talked about with the death of beef. I think that's something that's kind of prescient because again, that's something I think we deal with now. Where people can't decide, can't see the line of entertainment in real life,
or they don't care if there is one or not.
Or they don't care, right? Exactly.
So yeah. So I mean, but despite that, the movie is fun from start to finish. It doesn't, it doesn't get weighed down in the metaphor.
Nope.
It knows it's being what it wants to be.
Yeah.
Like I said, I call this, it's just a powerhouse. It's trudging through, it's dragging you along, and I mean, you're having fun the whole time. So yeah, I really like this movie. People should check it out.
That's awesome. I am so pumped to hear that. This movie is fantastic. From the first strum of the Juicy Fruits playing Goodbye, Eddie, Goodbye,
Yep.
This movie does not stop, and we hope you watch it and love it as much as we did.
All right, Rob. Well, I think we're about ready to head out of this conversation about Phantom of the Paradise. But before we go, what you been watching?
Let's see. Well, it is the Halloween season.
It is.
And I've been kind of
just
starting, and I've been watching some Halloween movies. As you know, I usually try to watch one every day. But a lot of those I've seen before, so not
Sure.
as many new. But I did watch one new one, and I finally got around to watching Long Legs.
Oh, I've seen that.
I was good. Did you?
No, I haven't seen it. I've seen that it exists.
Okay. I was going to say.
I haven't actually seen the movie.
Well, because I didn't feel like it might not be your kind of movie.
Yeah,
but,
not into horror that much.
But it is Osgood Perkins is the director, wrote it and directed it, and it stars Nick Cage, and it's really great Nick Cage too.
Yeah.
But it was a bit of a divisive movie I saw before I watched it. I was very excited to see it because I thought the trailers were interesting. Their stylistic tone was interesting. And then when the movie came out, it did get some pretty decent reviews. But then there were also some people that I saw calling it overrated and all of this, and I think I can understand why after watching it. Not that I found it underrated. I actually really enjoyed it. But I think people might go in with the wrong expectation of what the movie is.
Yeah.
Because it isn't actually as much of a quote-unquote horror movie as you might think it is. It's more of like a, tonal thriller. Right?
Yeah.
So I think that could be something that maybe it turns some people off. But I think there's some really interesting aspects to the serial killer angle and like some stuff with the occult that I think worked really well. And just like I said, the whole production design I think fit really, really well.
Cool.
Let's see, what else did I watch? In a non-Halloween,
You're allowed to do that still.
Am I? Okay,
Yeah.
good. Because I watched His Three Daughters. The
On
new
Netflix.
Netflix, right? The new Azazel Jacobs film.
That's on my
with
list.
Carrie Coon, Natasha Lyonne, and Elizabeth Olsen. And my God, was that movie great.
Really?
Oh my God. Like, it is a masterclass in dialogue.
Wow.
I mean, it really is just insane. And
Very
each
cool.
one of these actresses is they just are powerhouse actresses. And so I didn't realize at the time that I had seen another Azazel Jacobs film before, but I watched his movie Terry from like 2011 with John C. Reilly, and it stars. I only watched it once, and I can honestly say I don't remember that much about it. But I found out later that he had directed it, and I'm like, I had seen that, so I might rewatch that. But what I did watch is The Lovers because I liked His Three Daughters, which is another Azazel Jacobs film that's on the Criterion Channel right now, and that stars Deborah Winger and Tracy Letts, and that movie was really good.
Oh, so he's becoming a fan of the director?
I am. I think I'm going to start working my way through his stuff because, yeah, The Lovers was really great. It's kind of about like an aged couple who are both kind of cheating outside of their marriage, and they're like right on the precipice of divorcing, and then like just before it happens, like something like some spark kind of flicks with them,
Right.
and they start like having an affair with each other outside of their mutual affair. It's a good movie. It's great in that regard. And Deborah Winger is just, I mean, she's always fantastic. So it was great to see her in that. But yeah, I mean, I there's actually more I could talk about, but I'm not gonna because we want to turn this into a 30-minute thing. I don't know. I've watched more than I have normally. But what about you, man? Before we go, what about you?
I'm actually trimming down my list a little bit of things I've got to and finished up as well. But I checked out on HBO Max Civil War. I've been
okay.
wanting to check it out.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
A little divisive, but I liked it. I kind of think of like the Civil War aspect. I kind of think is more of a setting than a plot device to me.
Oh, interesting.
It's not the strongest part of the movie by any stretch. It's not taking a side or anything like that, which is fine. But I don't know. I almost kind of feel like it's I don't know. It's maybe it played that up to try to get some audience, and it's not really as much of a focus, because to me, it's like a war photographer movie, right? It's like this pack of war photographers that are crossing this dystopian country, and kind of the stuff that they subject themselves to, the stress, the danger, and that's kind of where the movie kind of hits, and that's where the themes kind of lie in. And like Nick Offerman, who plays this this president of this the seceding country or whatever, he's only in the movie for like a scene and a half, and maybe a voiceover. So it's like it's so they're heading to him, but it's such a backstory. Could be any war in any country, to be honest.
It's kind of like a vague thing that people can kind of cling on to because of how they kind of feel about current political situations.
Right, but it's not really commenting on it. You know what I mean?
It just is what it is.
Yeah, it just is what it is. So,
interesting.
But and maybe that's easier. Maybe it was easier too for filming, because you can film in the U.S.
right?
Than saying like this is a war in Africa. No, we have to film in Africa, or something like that. So I don't know, but
I like
it was
Alex
fine.
Garland. I do that. That's I was never. It was kind of like one of those things where it's like, well, I do like him, so I wouldn't mind checking out his movies. But it was a movie that I was really worried would be like so on the nose.
Yeah,
that I'm just like, I don't know about that.
Like I said, if this movie took place anywhere else, I probably would have gone and saw it in theaters. But because it was this playing off this American Civil War, I held off, and it's worth a watch. But like I said, I think the Civil War aspect is more of a setting than a plot device. And then on Netflix, I watched the new Will Ferrell, Will and Harper.
Oh,
cool! This live
great trailer.
Yeah, really great trailer. But Will Ferrell's going cross country with his trans female friend Harper. Can't remember what her last name is in the movie, but they were been friends forever from Saturday Night Live days.
Yeah,
and now they're going cross country because Harper, I guess, did a lot of cross country trips, and she's kind of now worried about like when she goes into the same dive bars, is that going to be when you get to certain parts of the country, is it going to be the same? Really anywhere you think about a dive bar, or think about just going to monster truck rallies or whatever, and so pretty good. I think the first 45 minutes maybe is like they're kind of working themselves into it, figuring it out, because it is real, like it's not scripted or anything, right? So like the conversations, it's hard for them to have the conversations too, because it's real. Like I'm not gonna say that Will Ferrell looks like uncomfortable, but it's like I have to ask my friends some tough questions. We're on camera. How do I finagle it? So it's like it's not this perfectly scripted thing.
Sure, it's very similar. Real life.
Yeah, it's real.
Harken back.
They start to get there though. They're on the road for each other for 2 weeks. So I think like by this maybe week 2 they started to get to that comfortability again, and they do kind of talk about it. It's like Will's like, honestly, he's like, well, am I going to be friends with Harper? Like, is Harper different than who I used to know? Like, so it's like almost kind of like making a new friend too. So it's like, so very interesting talk. They did get to, I think that second hour of the movie, it started to like get to some of the stuff that they probably wanted throughout, and worth a watch though. Worth a watch. I think it's something that's new to our culture. That people have to start wrapping their heads around. Right. Hopefully we do.
A good entryway to doing that.
Yeah. Will Harper's doing similar things to stay on board, the Leo Baker story, who's a trans male skateboarder. That movie is super powerful. That is a bit more scripted. Like it's sitting in chairs, like, the Talking Heads documentary, so they can kind of, make sure they're saying what they want to say, as opposed to like Will and Harper, which is like just
more naturalistic.
More naturalistic. So, but, 2 great movies, Stay on Board with Leo Baker was a great movie. It's a great watch. It's a great introduction to I think what trans people are feeling and going through. And then I think Will and Harper is a good little follow-up to it. Not as powerful, but still like I think it clarifies some misconceptions for people out there. I think it's worth a watch.
Oh, definitely. That sounds awesome. Well, we're definitely going to be checking that out.
All right, Rob, we have talked about Phantom of the Paradise for a good minute, but we are no longer under contract to keep doing so. A blood contract has expired.
It's got to be your blood.
We are done, but our audience has to sign the blood contract. If they don't, review this podcast, like this podcast, subscribe to the podcast, leave us a 5-star review. If you do, we will read it out loud and let you out of your blood contract.
Absolutely, we will definitely do that. Uh, if there is
Someday.
a someday,
We'll
someday,
definitely do that someday.
definitely. You are all clearly aware I loved Phantom of the Paradise, but I want to know if you loved Phantom of the Paradise. So if there is a comment section on whatever platform you are listening to us on, by all means, leave a comment and let us know how much you loved Phantom of the Paradise. We want to spread that love around. Recommend it to your friends. Recommend something to us, maybe besides Phantom of the Paradise.
You're
that we
allowed
have not
to do
seen
it.
before. You are allowed to do it. And, we're always looking for great movies to watch. We will be back in 2 weeks, and it will be back to Ray. And I'm going to be interested to see if he keeps with the holiday spirit in this.
I'm gonna leave a little bit of a cliffhanger.
Oh.
I'm gonna try though, but there's
Okay.
I have a twist in mind.
Okay,
That's all
all
I'm
right.
gonna say.
Well, that intrigues me. It should intrigue you. So you should definitely tune in and see what Ray has recommended. But until then, this is Car Ray Rob.
Where I'm Ray.
And I'm Rob. And remember, be defined by the films you love, not the ones you hate.
Hey there, it'll be just a little while till Ray and Rob spit their spittle. Come on, check out of the hospital. So grab some of your best peanut brittle. This will be a darn good transmittal. And say hello to my little film.
All right, guys. Thanks for sticking around. I want to tell you what I'm going to be presenting to Rob on our next episode of Say Hello to My Little Film. Trying to stick to the horror genre for Rob. It's really hard for me to find a movie that's horror-based that I have seen that he has not, but I have one. It might be the only one, but I have one. It's One Cut of the Dead, which is a 2017 Japanese movie. It is great. It is basically about a Japanese film crew making a zombie movie while a zombie attack happens. That's all I'm going to say about it. You guys need to check it out and listen to me and Rob's conversation on One Cut of the Dead on our next episode. See you guys there.